Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our TGT podcast, our weekly show in which we chat to a few of our guys about the week's events, look ahead to the incoming demise of Arsenal Football Club, and generally have some therapy as well. I'm joined by three fantastic guests this evening for tonight's show. First of all, it's the man who's effectively my man on the ground at the Emirates for every single protest. He broke into Old Trafford the other day and threw some flares around the stadium. How are you doing, Pablo? Are you well?
Just to get your live footage, mate. That's all it was, just to get your live footage. No, I'm doing well, thank you.
You were there at the protest. You were handing the microphone to, we should say, Pablo wasn't actually in Old Trafford, which just before anyone comes knocking at his door, he wasn't actually there. But he was at the Kroenke Out protest. I mean, you did great handing the microphone to people at the chat box were going off like reporter Pablo. It was great.
That actually turned out a lot better than I could possibly imagine, to be fair. I thought it was going to be a lot worse.
I was shocked at the surprise of how good the connection was at the start. It gradually did start to get a little bit more realistic as the guy was like listening and going, I can't hear a word he's saying. But no, we did get there in the end. But no, that was excellent. Finally, we've got our resident squatter, Owen. How you doing, mate? Are you well?
I'm good. I just have to keep the noise down in case the police hear me in here. It's a bit of a touch and go situation.
I mean, I was going to use the intro of like, you hate people so much. Not only have you come off social media, but you've moved to the middle of nowhere. But no, how is the life in the new place other than the fact there's no internet currently there, which you probably like, to be fair?
It's absolutely brilliant. It was funny, the guy that was showing me around the house when we first got there asked why we moved out here, and his face dropped after it. Says that my prime reason was I don't really like people that much. And that was the end of it. But yeah, no, awesome, man, awesome. It's good. It's been too long since I've been on, so it's good to get back to the OG podcast. Feinberg has me potted out.
I was going to say, we discovered you left, and you joined. And not only that, is that one else, obviously, we know that Feinberg and Hernandez have been good friends for a long, long time. But I mean, this is kind of where Mike really cut his teeth, if we're being honest. Hernandez, how you doing, mate? Are you well? Are you good?
Absolutely brilliant, man. Thanks for having me back. Everything's been an eventful couple of days, as per Arsenal, because, quiet is not what our club does, but I've been happy, dude. Like Owen's point, Frimpong, Mr. Magic himself, he's very demanding. There's a lot of demand over there. Man puts on an 8-hour marathon, and he expects us to follow up on that.
I mean, I don't know how he does that. That's a lie. No, I know exactly how he does that. He's fueled by alcohol and just a 7-hour marathon of podding. He's unbelievable. By the time he got to the game, I mean, if you're going to enjoy a game like Newcastle, we'll talk about that in a bit, it might as well be after a 7-hour bender, pretty much. It's the only way to enjoy it as he did. Unbelievable season. If you want to go check out Mike's stuff at the Gooders Pod, and you'll find it there with all manner of really horrible things. But obviously, we are, you may or may not have been aware that we're doing this podcast because, of course, I haven't been on social media for what feels like an eternity since Friday, taking part in the social media blackout. And we've known people that are not taking part, and they have their reasons for not taking part. I thought I would just do what I can to kind of show my message. But I think the thing is that people have been what I've found anyway, is very open to both sides of this. People that didn't want to take part, everyone's been like, fair enough, I completely understand your view. Similar to how some players don't want to take the knee anymore on the football pitch, which, again, I completely understand that message. Mike, as far as I'm aware, you didn't take part in the social media blackout. And I know that we've spoken a few things about kind of the taking of the knee on the pitch as well. What have you made of the social media blackout side of things? And what do you make of kind of that movement and the message that it's trying to get across?
It's very much, for me, look, I kind of refer to it as tokenism in a way, and it's a nice gesture. It's a nice token of well meaning. So I completely understand why people took the stance and say, hey, I want to show people and I want to show support for this movement. That's perfectly fine with me. So my issue is the lack of faith that the powers above of actually doing something. And this is going back to BLM, going back to the kneeling, taking kind of the Saha stance, where Saha kind of points out and says, why should I kneel just to ask for you to care? Why should I have a blackout, to say, hey, people, this should be something forced, that it should be so freaking obvious that it shouldn't be a split type of decision. So when I look at the blackout things, when I look at the kneeling down things, I fully agree and support and understand why they're doing it, because they're trying to use their voice. But ultimately, it kind of leaves me with a sense of it's not going to lead anywhere. And it's a shame, because when we see a massive, large group of fans join this blackout, athletes around the world join in on kneeling down, and then we have like the Slavia Prague incident, and we get the 10-match ban, and I am left like, well, there's clearly they're not getting the message. And this is going to relate, very closely to like the Manchester protest, in case we talk about it too. It's not so much that I disagree with how people are want to be, want to vocalize and show their opinions. It's more of I just don't see it making a difference. So my difference is I go upon my life, try to be a good human being and not being a prick to people. And that's what I do for the world, right? But as far as the blackout things, like I understand, the gesture of it. I just ultimately don't believe the powers that be are going to be worried about it, because at the end of the day, accounts are what Twitter's about, for example, or any other social media, not specifically them, or for football powers, it's the bottom line. And Samuel Eto'o had a brilliant interview that kind of recently popped up. This was a pretty old interview, and he mentioned a game, I think it was Mallorca, where they were insulting him, and he decided to walk out when he was there playing for Barcelona. And he said, they asked him, do you think this will change anything? And he goes, are you kidding me? If every player started walking out and all the team walked out and it affected people's wallet, there would be immediate change. And a good example, and I know there are two very, very different incidents here, but a very good example of that is the Super League. We saw with the quickness and how UEFA, FIFA, and all of them, they pounced on it within hours, versus something to the magnitude of abusing an individual for the color of his skin or because he looks different, because their religious background. It takes, well, hold on, let's not be hasty, let's look into this. And then ultimately the ban was like, it's a small ban, it's like a 2-month ban. And these clubs that were facing the Super League, it was a forever ban. Like, you're out of the league, you don't get to play the World Cup. It escalated immediately, and that only kind of, in my mind, cements the idea of, if it's not money, if it's not hitting their pockets, they're not really interested in it. So again, just backtracking, I fully support and understand why people did it, but I just wish there was a different way of maybe affecting their bottom line a little bit more, to make them take a little bit more notice, because there's been other incidents where we all know they're quick to ban accounts for like posting a replay that was recorded off of NBC almost immediately. And I just don't understand how there is no algorithm or method of figuring out how to sort out bad words or racist words. So yeah, props to you all. I will say social media is highly addictive, and props to you guys for cutting off cold turkey. I will point out that, because it does require some level or a lot of level of restraint. So props to you guys for supporting it.
Yeah, we were talking off air prior, saying effectively how I have taken the decision to write down a list of the people that I intend to reply to soon as this is over. So just seeing, because it is really difficult to kind of cut cold turkey social media at times. I mean, I'm going to come on to you in a second, because you've obviously done it. But coming from a perspective of someone leading a channel which is all about discussion, all about different opinions. I'm very opinionated myself. I see things written. I see people reply to my own tweets days after I've tweeted it out, and I can't reply to them again. I did block someone. I somehow managed to block someone during the social media blackout. I did DM someone, because we said we weren't actively using social media publicly, but Guna Souls, you may be aware of him on social media, basically asked the questions that he was asking, why are some channels choosing not to use their social media platforms like Twitter and Instagram, but yet they are continuing on using YouTube? Like, I've continued on using YouTube. I've posted videos, and as he said in the tweet, he wasn't calling people out. He wanted to understand. And so I DM'd him straight away, and I said that the reason why I do it is because this is effectively my job now. I will happily do as much as I feasibly can in my power to show my support. And if it means not going onto social media and not posting anything, I'll do that. But at the same time, I still have to think about the paying of the mortgage, etc. And that's why I've posted the videos over the last couple of days, and to keep up kind of people's content as they come to the channel and they're loyal to the channel and they want to watch the videos and stuff. So that's why I've done that and made the decision just completely to cut Twitter and Instagram, but continued on with YouTube. Now, Owen, you've cut Twitter completely. I mean, talk me through it, because you talked to me and you said it was bliss and you said it was all of these good things. But did you find any difficulty in not being tempted to jump on and see what these idiots say? See what these, and when I say idiots, I mean me. What I'm saying.
To be honest with you, no. There's been no sort of fallback whatsoever. I made once I came to the sort of conclusion that that's what I was going to do, I was going to step away from Twitter. I made a really active effort to seek out the people like Jared that I had met on this channel and Mike, and basically all the people I've become quite close with over my time on Twitter. And I made an active effort to give them other avenues to contact me, and like I stay in touch with you boys over WhatsApp and stuff like that. I still have Facebook, but I really sort of still only stick to Facebook Messenger on there as well. But essentially, I'll talk you through how I came to that sort of point. Was that when I started podcasting is when I made my Arsenal Twitter, and I sort of indulged in it a lot, and I was trying to build my profile for while I was writing for the Gunner Talk, and while I was setting up the Gunner Crack channel, and then eventually going on to the Gunners podcast. And I really tried to immerse myself in this sort of world of Arsenal Twitter and online Arsenal fan base community. And I eventually started realizing, Jesus, I'm spending 6, 7, 8 hours a day sometimes between sitting on a podcast and talking, and then going on Twitter, debating people or having conversations with people on Twitter about what's happening at Arsenal. And it all sort of came to a head through the death of Claude from AFTV. And he's somebody who I had never even interacted with. I'd never spoken to him. I wouldn't claim to have known the man at all. Obviously, I felt like I knew him through my years of, watching him on that channel. But when I saw the reaction online, assumptions being made, statements being made from people who knew absolutely nothing, and throwing about some very vile accusations to certain other people, I thought that this just isn't a nice place. If this was a bar, say your local bar, and you went in and people spoke to each other the way that people speak to each other in this platform, you probably wouldn't go back. And that's when I says to myself that Arsenal for me has been one of the biggest loves of my life, and it will always be. But everything is healthy in moderation. And for me, football was always an escape from the stresses of real life, from work, from family, from whatever. For so many people, for so many different reasons, it's an escape. And eventually it felt like I was having to escape Arsenal and go back to real life. And that's when I said to myself that this isn't good. Constantly just, it's too much, and it's sucking the enjoyment out of football. Also, another thing that I've talked with Hertz about that I thought was happening to me as a person was that my views were starting to become filtered, that I felt like I was almost stuck in an echo chamber sometimes, because as you know, there's often with Arsenal fans or football fans on social media, there's two camps, and you're either in one of them two. And it's sort of very tribal, and pick your camp and stick to it. So I felt that when I was watching games and stuff, that I was coming on and I wasn't giving a completely honest reaction to some of the situations that had occurred, or situations around the club that were being debated online. I felt like I was almost tailoring my opinions to suit the camp that I was in, because I was worried with the backlash that I would receive from others. And I said to myself, well, that's really not right. What I want to do is come on and give me honest opinion about what's happening, and not say things just to please other people. So, but yeah, no, something that I found is that I'm really enjoying my football a lot more now. And I feel like that, even though as people, me and Yannick always joke, and it's a term that we don't really like, but we just use for the crack on this channel, is flip flop. And that's, I don't really care if I come on. I don't really care if I come on and I sound like a flip flop, because something that I've talked to you about before is I have absolutely no shame in saying that I was wrong or changing my mind about something from one week to another. The context and the landscape of every individual situation changes so much through time that you can never hold one opinion, and that's it. So, but yeah, that's essentially my story of how I stepped away from social media. And to be honest with you, I don't think I'll ever go back.
And I don't blame you at all. And I have absolute admiration for the decision to take yourself off it because, as I say, I found it extremely difficult these last couple of days not to be tempted to go on and reply and to get involved in debates or discussions or put my point of view across or give my input. There's kind of a desperation, I suppose. It's part of human nature to desperately want to have your own voice heard. We love having our own voices heard at times and seeing our names pop up on certain things, I think, always. And it's really difficult to not try and throw. So I genuinely, the level of admiration for anyone, including yourself, that comes off social media cold turkey is immense. Pablo, to kind of round off this discussion on the social media blackout, this week we saw, I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was an 18-year-old at the time, I think it was 19-year-old kid now in Singapore, that has been charged with basically abuse. He sent Neil Maupay, I believe he is an Arsenal, I'm assuming he's an Arsenal fan. He sent Neil Maupay basically death threats towards his family and to him on social media after the 2-1 defeat at Brighton at the end of last season. If you remember the whole Guendouzi throttling incident, that game, and Neil Maupay injured, burnt Leno with the jump and all that. He's been charged and will face the consequences of those messages as an example of kind of things that can be done, that we are maybe starting to identify people. But at the same time, I saw an amazing video put up by the Premier League where Ian Wright was talking to Alan Shearer about the abuse that he had faced and some of the awful racist abuse that he kind of deals with on a daily basis. Of course, we know the story about, I believe it was someone in Ireland, a child that sent him abuse and was basically let off because the judge gave him basically kind of a slap on the wrist for it. So it's your first offence sort of thing and stuff, allegedly. So it's almost as if we've got kind of this polarizing thing of it's being dealt with in some cases, in others, when it seems even as clear as the evidence is as clear as it was for one, it's still not being dealt with in the same way. Do you think that this social media blackout is going to have any impact at all and change anything going forwards?
No, to be honest with you, I mean, I think it's a nice gesture. It's really nice. I can see what people are doing. I can see the intention behind it. But unfortunately, it all comes down to money, Tom. If something isn't affected by money, people don't react. And what I mean by that is if you sort of put something racist on Twitter, let's just use Twitter as an example, yeah? The likelihood of you actually getting prosecuted and anything happening to you and you being blocked and stuff like that is still slim, way too slim to what it should be, yeah? But should you talk about something that is, let's just say, like financially, like it's hard to, I'm sort of struggling to explain it because it's like, it's all down to up top. A little bit like the protest with Arsenal, for example. Like, I was there at the protest. I don't believe, and I'm just going to sound really contradictory, I don't believe that we made that much of a difference. I think Kroenke wanted to sell way before, if he does want to sell, if the rumours are true that he wants to sell, because his pocket has been hit over our poor performances the last few years. Black Lives Matters, again, kneeling down, people kneeling down. I get it. I respect what they're doing. It's not really helping. Again, it's not helping. For me, I actually think the racism is gone up recently rather than go down. It's almost like we're highlighting these things and they're expanding and making it a lot bigger than what they were before. Rather than it helping, it could be actually going the other way. So unfortunately, as nice as it is for everybody to sort of try and get together and do this, I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference to anything, really.
Can I just jump in there? See, Pablo mentioned there the fact that racism arguably has got worse over the last year or so. What I would say to people is that can be quite disheartening when you see something like that there. But often in times, and I know that politically, and I'll not dive into the politics of Northern Ireland, but I know here that often when there's the potential of change, that's when stuff starts to spring its head up. When you bring about the prospect of change, people who were comfortable, who held those views originally, who were in the shadows, start to pop their heads out. So just because it seems like racism is going up doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't always there already. It's just that the fear of change brings those people more into the spotlight. So I would say that and I would say to Pablo's statement there about more racism, I would say that that's a sign that it's working. And for people not to stop, that they need to keep the push on now. And if this past few weeks has shown us anything, it's that it's the power of people. You know, we often think that we can't do anything, but that's the worst mindset we can have. So I think in terms of, you say, walkouts, or I even mentioned as well, if you're in a stadium and somebody says a racist remark, don't be afraid to say it personally to them, because often there's no violent reaction. It's often embarrassment you get from the person as well. So yeah, I would say that it's just about keeping the push on, and it may seem like it's not working, but it is.
Yeah, well said, mate. I think all of you have spoken exceptionally well on the topic. I have to say, it's a sensitive one. It's really difficult, and everyone's got so many different valued opinions about this. But I think we've tackled it there really well. And obviously, if you want to find out more information, there's lots of places, guys, if you're listening, that you can go to learn more. And I'm sure if you want to speak to any of the guys on social media, or you have to find Owen's house if you want to speak to him. But I'm sure if you do, he'll speak to you. If you want to talk to them about it and get their views, I'm sure they'll be open to speaking about it. Of course, you can find Owen in the Discord server as well if you're desperate. But now let's obviously talk about the football and talk about what we saw this weekend, or earlier this weekend, and look ahead to what is becoming an increasingly really kind of worrying game on Thursday about the definition of our season. But we'll start off by talking about Newcastle. I'm not going to spend too long on it, because as we know, it wasn't the most inspiring of matches, and kind of the main talking points from it was kind of the players that forced themselves into the limelight for Thursday's game. Mike, I'll start with you about kind of the star of the show, who was really kind of put forward by the fan base a lot. Wanted to see him start more after coming back from injury. And that was Gabriel Martinelli, full of energy, gave you everything we can come to expect from Martinelli on a football pitch. An amazing assist. And I say that because it was with his left foot, the curl ball across the box, and massive credit to Aubameyang for finishing off a ball that was difficult to deal with in that kind of height. But he did it really well, and stuffed Fabian Schär, by the way, at the end of that game for the ridiculous challenge for absolutely no reason on him. But what do you make of Martinelli as a player? And what do you make about Arteta's reluctance, despite quotes today I saw from him saying that he loves Gab more than anyone? So tell me what you think about the little Brazilian, mate.
Yeah, first and foremost, when you said a star that everybody wanted to see, I thought you were talking about El Neni and his lethal shots, obviously. But Martinelli, dude, I can't not watch Martinelli and think of Alexis Sanchez and not think of Alexis Sanchez. He just, every time, somebody put on a compilation on Twitter just the other day, shortly after the game, and it was like 2 minutes of him, right? And every time he grabbed the ball, he immediately spin, attack the goal, immediately try to take on a player, immediately take it to the byline, try to cross it. He has such hunger for the game, and the way he tackles the game. It's again Alexis Sanchez vibes. I know that he's not everybody's favorite person. However, dude, the kid is an absolute baller. I kind of was on the same line as you, Tom, early on in the season when A, he was coming back from a pretty long-term injury. B, we didn't know where he was fully in full development. So we've seen little bits and pieces of him, but never an extended period. So I always was kind of hesitant on it. And I always kind of take the stance of, I don't know what's going on in the training pitch. I don't know what's being the dialect between the manager and the player is. So when a player isn't getting minutes, we can make assumptions as fans, right? Because we all think we all know what's exactly the best thing for the club. And to be fair, sometimes we're right about certain things. Cough, cough, William, right? But every time he's been on the pitch, ever since he became healthy, he's never not impressed. So there's only argument, if I could get into Arteta's mind, and I try to nitpick at the interviews that Arteta gives. And one thing he one day spoke about after a game was the amount of youth in a team. And he kind of alluded to, hey, I can't have a team of like 8 teenagers, 9 teenagers, right? Because, Saka, we have a lot of teenagers and a few early 20s. And maybe he just feels that that's going to unbalance the squad to a certain extent. I remember there was a game where Luis came out shortly after and said, we ended up winning the game. And I'm trying to remember if it was just one of those typical Arsenal hold on for your dear life type of results. And Luis kind of just came out and said, well, inexperience is a big thing. We got ahead. We were feeling that rush that we got ahead. And then we went to, holy crap, mentality like we're ahead, we just got to hold on for 10 minutes. And, we were horrible the last 10 minutes and ultimately ended up winning like 2-1. So I think it might just be a maturity level thing. But that said, if I'm looking at Smith Rowe, Saka, those are players that have now been around the first team squad long enough where I don't look at them as teenagers. I don't look at them like, hey, these are young kids. So I'm pro Martinelli, and the thought that he could potentially start on Thursday, that would be fantastic. But there's a major decision to make because Pepe has been on form as of late, so that's going to be a massive shout. But as far as Martinelli, I cannot praise him enough. Seems to never miss. He sooner or later, I think by the end of the season, if he keeps on getting some minutes, we're going to see him score. But beautiful assist for Aubameyang, which is a beautiful thing that he got some minutes under his belt. Looking forward for Thursday. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, he's spoken really well about him in regards to kind of the energy that he gives us. I love the comparison between him and Alexis Sanchez. It's that drive and will to win that Arsenal have been lacking so much this season, and he does encapsulate a lot of that. He is still, in my view, a very raw player still, and he is someone that's not going to give you what I feel is like technically 9 out of 10 performances every single week, because I don't think he's yet capable of that. I think he still needs to develop a lot more. But what he's going to give you is absolute 11 out of 10 in terms of effort, determination, and application in the game. He's going to demand of his teammates from a young age, and that's something maybe this team has needed. And maybe that was why we came out of the blocks as fast as we did on Saturday. I believe it was Saturday when we played Newcastle. And there was that eagerness to try and score straight away and put the difficulties we'd had in the previous midweek to rest. And even though we'd made 8 changes, I think it was, that was certainly worthy of it. And obviously the man that scored, Owen, was El Neni. I'm going to let you come on to that in a second. But I know that you've got, as you've put it, a bastard's view of Arteta regarding Martinelli. So go for it, man.
No, it wasn't even so much about Gabriel Martinelli thing. It's just more of this game as a whole. So I suppose even just to summarize this game, there's 2 chains of thought you could have with this game as a whole, and it's that it was pointless, or that it was pointless, but it was a good performance to take us into Thursday. Whereas I hold a slightly different view. I actually think that whilst it was a good performance and whilst I'm happy about the win, that I don't think that this game was the best thing for Arsenal at this time whatsoever. The comparison that I would do it to is, say, for example, if put it like this here, if this was Game of Thrones and Steve Bruce was in a trial by combat, he has just picked Bran Stark and Mikel Arteta has picked the Mountain. That's how much of a fight it was, so but the comparison I was going to do was, if let's say some professional heavyweight boxer, Tyson Fury, is fighting for a world title, he doesn't go and spar against an amateur a couple of weeks out before his fight. He wants to be having a relatively good test before the game, and I don't think that Newcastle gave us that whatsoever. In fact, I struggle to remember the last time I seen the team lay down and die so blatantly. It was so easy. So whilst I do think the performance was good, I don't think that it was probably the best thing for Arsenal before such a big game. There could be a false confidence there. But in terms of with Mikel Arteta, something that I was really, really annoyed about, and Mikel Arteta, when he came into this club, and you know fine well, Tom, that as a person, I'm a fan of Arteta. I'm not sure about him as a manager at this level just yet. But when he came into the club, he sort of built his reputation on the fact that he was going to be quite strict and quite heavy-handed when it came to setting a new culture at the club. Yet we went into this game, and although people can say about rotation on Thursday coming up, Granit Xhaka was deployed at left-back again. Dani Ceballos was in the midfield. And Granit Xhaka picked up a yellow card quite early on and had to play with it the rest of the match. And to be honest with you, I think that Granit Xhaka was arguably lucky to still be in the pitch, because he did a unnecessary late body check on the thing. And what I was annoyed about was not only did he deploy those 2 players in the positions that blatantly didn't work before, but he refused to make the substitute. There was a lack of willingness to learn from your mistakes. And I know it sounds stupid to be complaining after a win, and I'm as happy as anybody. No. But for me, there's still signs of naivety there from a man that we have placed so much trust to lead us through arguably the biggest game in decades for this club in terms of how the future can go. So for me, the result was good, but there was still a lot of warning signs there that I wasn't happy with.
Mate, you there have summed up kind of everything that is the reason why my mind is much more open to believing that a change in manager is not the word, is not kind of completely out of the question for me, because the reason why I've given kind of why it's taken me, I guess, this long, I suppose, to be more open-minded about a change in manager beyond just the results and based upon actually what he's doing and his tactical decision making, is because he is a new coach. And so all of the mistakes that I saw him making, in my mind, I'm going, okay, he's young, he's inexperienced, and gradually he'll learn to change and will learn to do things. And it's taken him a long time before he removed Willian from the team and removed Bellerin from the team after some really poor performances. But I can't now, 18 months down the line, look at the decisions that are being made like we saw on Thursday, not getting Ceballos off earlier. I mean, if we saw how Emery played in the second half against us on Thursday. If we'd have had 11 men on the pitch, maybe we could have got more from the game. If we'd have changed things tactically at halftime like I wanted us to, like I was desperate because it was clearly not working on Thursday at halftime, and we could make 5 changes. You could make them 3 times throughout the match, not including halftime. So that wouldn't have even counted at halftime if we would have wanted to make the changes. You can make 5 subs, and by, what was it, with 10 minutes left, we'd only made 1. So it's that unwillingness to change. It's the stubbornness to change that I really get frustrated with, and the same frustrations which caused so much kind of animosity, I suppose, towards Wenger at the end of his time at the club, was the lack of wanting to change and staying too loyal to his selection and not wanting to. With Emery, it was too far in the other end. He was so desperate to change his mind that often he messed things up, and he did it against us on Thursday. And that's ultimately why it could cost them the tie overall. And it is that balance. We've gone from one extreme to the other. And then while some things have happened and some things haven't, it's left us pretty much in a same sort of position as where we were this time last season, in a really poor position in the league and with a final to try and play for. We won it last season. We might not win it this season. Pablo, when it comes down to other players on the pitch that did play, there's 2 players that I want to focus on. The first one is El Neni, got his goal, came in and played instead of Thomas Partey, who himself has received a lot of criticism from the fans. I don't necessarily agree with quite a lot of it, but he still received that criticism. And then he scored, and I actually thought, to be honest, if I'm being really honest, I thought it was one of his best performances I've seen in an Arsenal shirt. One of the biggest criticisms I've had of El Neni is that he's not progressive, he's too passive, he passes the ball sideways and backwards too much, but he didn't in this game. He passed forwards. Even though it was only Newcastle, he still had kind of the initiative to take the game, pass forwards, take the ball into spaces, play it into the areas that we needed to play it, and it was a better performance from him. So my question is does he start for you if and only if Granit Xhaka is persisted with at left back?
I mean, if Xhaka's going as a left back, I'll be honest with you, I'd lose all faith in that game. It just doesn't work. It just won't. It's been shown it doesn't work. To me, I think Xhaka should be playing centre mid alongside Partey. You say, should El Nene go there if Xhaka's playing left back? Who else have we got? We really haven't got any other options to put El Nene there. So regardless of his progress or how he played last game or how he's been playing the last God knows how many games, he's the only option we got. We can't really play anybody else unless you start looking then at the youth side, which I don't believe he'll ever think about bringing in the likes of Aziz or anybody like that. Like, I know a lot of people on social media are like, oh, play him. He ain't going to play him. Yeah, it's definitely not going to happen. So to me, I mean, El Nene is your type of player. I think I've said before that he's your 7 out of 10 player, 6, 7 out of 10 every single game. You know what you're going to get from him. You know what he's going to offer, and that's it. That's pretty much his limit. Every now and then he'll come up with a good goal. This season's actually got quite a few good goals, but yeah. But that's pretty much it. To me, I just can't understand in Arteta's mind. I mean, you ask anybody, any Arsenal fan, what their starting lineup will be on Thursday, and we would all pretty much agree by 1 or 2 players. And I can guarantee you, majority of them won't have Xhaka left back, and they'll have him centre mid. Yeah. And Saka, to me, is the one that plays at left back. Or Cedric. You can argue Cedric, Saka. There's other options there. But he's been so stubborn recently. Now, I was an Arteta in guy right from the start. I used to argue with everyone about it. Now, give him a chance, everything else. I'm really starting to have doubts now. Really am, because some of his decision making, some of the Like, so the substitutions drive me crazy. We can all see from sitting at home what's going on in the game. He must be able to notice that, but he's so stubborn. He doesn't want to change it until it's too late. I mean, making 2 substitutions with 30 seconds left to go, that's managerial genius, that is. So, I mean, yeah. So to me, El Nene would be our only option should Xhaka play left back, but I really don't want to see that happening. Really don't.
Yeah. Go on, Mike. I know you're going to come in on kind of the Xhaka thing, so I'll let you go.
Yeah, on the Xhaka thing, just gauge the panel here, just out of curiosity. Is it that we are devastatedly out of depth in the midfield that we just miss him so much, or do you just feel like he's necessarily doing a bad job at left back? Because to be completely honest with you guys, after that Thursday game versus Villarreal, I thought he handled Chukwueze fairly. Nailed it.
Jesus.
I thought
the pronunciation. Let's just appreciate that for a second.
I thought he handled Chukwueze really well. Literally, he got past him once early on, which led to the kind of a ping pong type of goal with Trigueros scoring it ultimately. But after that, in the second half, the whole tactic was give the ball to Chukwueze and let him do his magic. And I think I could count 3, 4, 5 times where Xhaka just stood his ground, picked the ball out from him, and successfully, took the ball out of his possession. So I'm looking at Xhaka, and I don't, just to premise it, to add some context, and I know Xhaka isn't the most famous or popular figure in our club right now, but I don't necessarily look at Xhaka and say he's doing a bad job at left back. He's obviously no Tierney, but Tierney is on a level of left backs on his own. As far as Xhaka goes, I just want to throw that out there. I don't know if anybody has a strong rebuttal and feels that he hasn't been performing well, but in my opinion, Xhaka has been the ultimate professional for us. He seems to be absolutely willing to play and or die for this club, literally wherever Arteta wants him to play. And I mean, look, it's a redeemable quality to say the very least. So, not trying to infuriate anybody. I'm not trying to say he's a world-class midfielder, but he is a vital part to not only our midfield when he does play that, but I think he's a vital part to the entire squad with his personality and how he comes out with it.
You're piling these up, man. It's first of all, you were a Kroenke supporter. You're a Super League enthusiast, and now you're a Granit Xhaka lover. Jesus. No. I think you made some good points there. He is a sort of the consummate professional where he will tuck in, but the reality is that he has very limited physical capabilities. And I think that when you say that he hasn't really done that bad, I would say I would have to disagree. I think that he looked out of his depth a lot of the time, apart from arguably was it Sheffield United. He did quite well, but that's because they didn't really cause much of a threat whatsoever.
I mean,
and I think if
scored a hat-trick against them, so they must be bad.
Yeah. No, but I think as well that if you go back and watch the game, something that I noticed when I was watching it was that Gabriel makes up for a lot of his mistakes, that his ability to close distance out to the sort of the touchline and sort of and rescue Xhaka from being made like a real idiot is massive. And I think that when you have a player who is having to make up for somebody else, then he can't be fully focused on his own job. And I think he brings everything down. But I think you make a good point, and that's where my frustration lies with Granit Xhaka in the left back position, is that it doesn't only weaken us in the left back position, it weakens us in midfield massively. So you have to weigh up those options. And for me, there's better alternatives. Something else I have touched on as well is that when you play in a position in football, you need to have some sort of natural experience in that position. And Gabriel grew up throughout his early footballing career as a left back. I think it was only actually maybe he had only played as a centre back for 2 seasons before we eventually purchased him. So in terms of, and I think something with Gabriel as well, some of the arguments is that he's slow, that he won't have the pace either. But man, that guy can move. Maybe you don't realise it, but that dude can shift, and you've seen it against Newcastle when he went full on Ronaldinho and beat half the field. he's got mobility. So for me, he's a more natural fit in that position, and it sort of shores up our midfield. So I really don't. I think the Xhaka experiment has to come to an end, and I hope that the Newcastle game was just sort of Mikel Arteta being stuck between a rock and a hard place in terms of who he had to select.
You can't exactly argue with Owen about his knowledge of Gabriel, because I just posted a link in the chat box because he did do a biographical piece on Gabriel, so he knows his stuff. Pablo, is there anything that you want to say just on the Xhaka left-back debate that we haven't already said?
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of on agreeing here a little bit with Ian, because I personally think that he's played really well against Fulham.
With Ian. Yes.
Clip that. I gotta send that to Magic.
No, but I mean, Xhaka on the left. He played well against Fulham, Sheffield United, and Newcastle. Yeah, Everton struggled. Villarreal. Oh, I'd love to say it how you said it. Villarreal struggled as well. Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I think there's two bad things with playing him as left back. First of all, is he's not capable of playing. He can against a weaker team if he hasn't got that much of a threat. Yeah. So that is the one point. The second point is that midfield, we were absolutely we were ruined in the midfield against Villarreal. Completely ruined, and that's because Xhaka wasn't there. So to me, I think Xhaka should go centre mid and put somebody else left back. Even Gabriel, Cedric, Saka. You've got options. You don't have to mess up your midfield, which is the core of your team, to put Xhaka out there, personally.
Yeah, it will absolutely kind of... I'll build myself up for the game. I'm going to get all excited about it as I did last Thursday. The lineup's going to come out and I'm going to see Xhaka at left back, and my heart is just going to absolutely sink. It really, really is. I think there's three ways to look at the Xhaka situation, to be honest, and kind of the schools of thought around it. One opinion about Granit Xhaka is just the kind of the party that absolutely hates him no matter what he does. He can't do anything right. They want him to be sold. He's a mistake merchant, and that's it. And it doesn't matter what he does. He's rubbish. The second is that he's a very good midfielder for us. I think he is a very good midfielder. I think he offers us a lot in terms of his range of passing, in terms of how he brings the ball forwards with his passing and uses the wide areas, and his leadership skills, as we know, are there as well. And then the final one is it's just the fact that we lose so much attacking threat from a fullback position. Whether it's Tierney not being there, which is a massive loss for us, but even Cedric gets forward when he's playing in that left back role. More so, way more than Granit Xhaka does. What you find with Granit Xhaka, and we saw it against Newcastle quite a lot, is he actually ends up filling his usual centre midfield spot in the final third, is when he's on the outside of the box, ready to pass kind of a final ball through, ironically, to a left back that's not there because he's forgotten that's actually the job that he's got to do. And we lose that element. So I really, really pray that we don't. I have a horrible feeling based on the fact that that's all we've done since he started there against Sheffield United, that is where he's going to play. And we know from the form of Arteta that's what's going to happen. So, yeah, we will wait and see. Now, we've got about 15 minutes before we go on to the questions. I imagine there'll be a few questions about Leno and Ryan. So we're going to talk about that in the question section about half an hour. The last part that I want to talk about is specifically on Arteta. We've touched on him quite a bit already. But I really do want to get a feeling about the importance of Thursday with you guys in regards to the manager, about where it sits with you. Because I was very much of the opinion, and I maintain this when people kept on asking me, and trust me, people love to ask me if I'm yet Arteta out. It's become a thing on the show, especially after we lose, still asking me the questions. And I basically have always been of the mind that I wanted to give him the summer. I felt like I needed more evidence, especially with backing and more players being brought into this squad, what he was capable of. But as we've kind of alluded to, things have changed for me a bit. I am concerned about the things that I'm seeing. I'm concerned about the lack of changes I'm seeing and the stubbornness, and also the performance that we put in our most important game of the season last Thursday. That really, really, really concerned me, especially considering it was against our former manager. So I am very much more, my mind is very much more open to change. And I feel like this Thursday coming is going to have a much bigger impact on where I sit this season on it. I feel like if we reach a final against Man United, we've reached the final against Man United, who are far and away the favourites for that fixture if we get there. And so whatever happens in that game, it's pretty much, I can justify that. I can't really justify Villarreal across 2 legs, to be honest. I'm going to go in reverse order and start with you, Pablo, first. Talk to me about, you did say earlier that you kind of were having more doubts about the coach. What is it, I suppose, to ask and flip it, I suppose, it's what's keeping your faith right now? What's pulling at your heartstrings about Arteta to say that you want to keep with this guy, you want to see where it goes, and you want to see him next season?
I can see some improvements that he's made. I mean, defensively, we seem to be a lot more solid. You don't have teams like we did when we was under Unai Emery, having teams having 20, 30 shots against us in a game. We're playing what they call the Arteta balls every now and then. You can see what his vision is of what he wants to do with the team. I'm a little bit concerned, I think, is where my concern sort of kicks in with him, is that I never thought experience was an issue before. I really didn't. But I'm actually beginning to think it does actually have an effect on his management, sort of on his decision-making, actually. It's almost like he doubts himself sometimes during the game. He knows everyone can see what is going wrong, and he sort of doubts himself. He doesn't. It's almost like he's afraid to make that change. I don't know. To me, I like him. I like him as a person. I really liked him when he came in. I loved him last season, and that kind of still is sort of it's playing on my heartstrings a bit, sort of saying that old Arsenal player, he's won us the FA Cup. I can see where he's going. I've got a lot more sort of leeway with him because I know that our team's crap. We are absolutely rubbish. We need to really upgrade our whole squad near enough. So he's got an impossible job ahead of him. So that's the only reason why I'm not completely Arteta out, because I don't believe that not anybody can come in and change this. Yeah. So you kind of have to give him the benefit of the doubt a little bit. But in terms of the way things are going at the moment, should he fail Thursday, it's going to be hard, especially if he fails through his own mistakes. That's what would really irritate me, and that would be really hard for me to turn back from, because I think we are where we are because of poor squad. Our team just ain't good enough. People just can't seem to get it through their head. Our squad is not good enough. We're relying on 18, 19-year-olds to get us through. Yeah. I mean, you look at any of the top 6 teams. How many of them are literally relying on teenagers to get them out of crap? If we took out our teenagers for one game, we would get nowhere. We'd get absolutely nowhere. And you look at Man City, United, Chelsea, any of them, they don't have that problem. They don't have teenagers that they're relying on. So, you've got to take that into consideration when you're looking at Arteta as what he's doing as a job, because the job is massive. It's not just running a football team. It's almost like restarting a football team. That's what he's got to deal with, yeah? So that's the only little thing that keeps me going, come on, Arteta, I know you can do this, but apart from that, his decision-making is just driving me up the wall.
Yeah, and I think I can... Dan Robert in the chat, I know he's exaggerating, but he says take away all kind of the stupid mistakes that we've made and we'd be third, which obviously I think is a bit of exaggeration. But I think if you compare like kind of errors that lead to goals in our team compared to others, and if we didn't make those mistakes and a little bit of luck went our way in regards to, VAR, we're second bottom in regards to VAR overturns in our favour and second bottom in regards to VAR returns going against us, or second top, whatever it is. The way it works out that we're basically crap for VAR. And so I know it's a lot of ifs and buts, but it does come into it. And you talked about the young players there. Man City have been able to gradually integrate Phil Foden into that side, and you look at him explode and what he's able to do. And I feel like Arteta's doing that with Martinelli, but the problem is that Martinelli's as good as the players he's trying to gradually feed him in with and give him a chance, which is frustrating a lot of supporters. If it was happening at Man City, you'd be able to justify it because the quality is just so far and away better than Martinelli. But at Arsenal, it's really not that much of a difference. And that's what I think a lot of fans are struggling with, and for good reason. Thank you, Classy Football, for upgrading your membership. Really appreciate that, fella, and the extra financial support there is really appreciated, considering all of the massive stuff that we're changing over the channel and plan to do so in the future. So enjoy all your stuff. If you haven't yet already joined our Discord server, I'll make sure to put a new link for that in the community tab after the show. Owen, there's kind of interesting questions around, especially Arteta, and I suppose kind of his viewership amongst fans, and how we perceive and how we actually judge performances based upon the squad available to him. His decision making is clearly what we've identified as the biggest kind of crux as why we can point the finger and go, no, not all of this. You can't just pin all of this on the players, because there is a lot of issues that have been down to you. We had a discussion, remember, on the LTA show, I think it must have been December, January time. And you were at that point effectively fine in saying, I think we should move on from this coach. Look at what's out there. Maybe you brought up Rafa Benitez as a name, if I remember. You're nodding away, so I must be right. And that's been something that's kind of been put forward in the chat, is that if we do move on from him, who do you go and get? Because you see Spurs right now, they lose Mourinho, and they look like they are scrounging around at the moment for coaches. I mean, they wanted Eric Ten Hag for the season. He's gone to sign a new deal, which is just glorious. And then you're seeing them linked to Nagelsmann. He's gone to Bayern Munich. The other options that are out there, and the names that people go for and say, I'd turn around and go, why would they want to leave where they are to come to Arsenal right now? Or is that the right coach for a project and a situation where there's so many ingrained issues as there is at a club like Arsenal? So how do you feel about all of those kind of factors in the possible replacement of it?
Well, for me, I agree with Pablo. I think in a situation like this, experience is absolutely massive. You know, like you wouldn't take, let's say, a newly qualified chef after his first day of graduating from college and throw him into a Michelin star restaurant and say, here, run the place, you know. And that's what it is for me. It's that I did mention someone like a Rafa Benitez, and you made the comparison there with someone like a Jose Mourinho. But for me, Rafa Benitez hasn't dipped in the fashion that Jose Mourinho has. His trend has been much more consistent. We're seeing him at clubs like Newcastle, and you have to put into context the resources available and the standard of players available. And I think he's always outperformed maybe the expectations of what was achievable with all the teams that he's been through. Also, I think as well is that we have arguably one of the worst dressing rooms in the Premier League, if not in football as a whole, in terms of players who have been sitting cushy and getting an easy living for the past while. And I think that they've been pampered, and someone with a name and profile like Rafa Benitez could come in and have earned the right to be heavy-handed. I always say that with Mikel Arteta and his stubbornness, that he hasn't earned the right to be as stubborn as he is at the minute. But now, look, with Mikel Arteta, I like him, and I made the comment that I would like to see him, regardless, be given the summer window and then judge him by Christmas next year, because then there can be no excuses for me. You know, if we invest relatively well in the summer, then he has no excuses. But something that I hear a lot of the time as well is that this squad is poor, and I think as collectively they aren't as good as they should be. But where my issue lies is that when you look at people individually, you know, you look at Gabriel, you look at Pablo Mari, Rob Holding given a new contract, people were saying he was very, very good. Granit Xhaka as well, as someone who's often defended, Thomas Partey, Martin Odegaard, go through the whole squad. When you criticize any of these players individually, people are very quick to defend them and say, no, they're actually quite good. If you look at this statistically in comparison with the rest of the players, blah, blah, blah. That's often the arguments we hear, and people are very quick to defend them. But when you talk about them as a collective, people are so quick to shoot them down as a group of players in defense of a manager. You know, and that's where my problem lies, is that I think that, yes, the squad is poor, but is it 9th poor? Is it 10th poor? Is it 11th poor? No, it's far, far from it for me. And when you say about Mikel Arteta and his performance as manager, like you just said, the lack of progression on the pitch is bad enough. But the fact that he keeps making these decisions, it's like repairing somebody to save a sinking ship. And for every single hole that he's repairing, he's making 2 or 3 more. And for me, with Thursday night, a lot depends on if we go out against Villarreal. I could have 2 different feelings. If the team selection is logical and correct, and the managerial decisions throughout those 90 minutes are logical and correct, then you just said the better team won. The players didn't do their job well enough. We're out. But if we go out there with Granit Xhaka at left back and somebody at false nine, or a silly decision made, or a Hector Bellerin playing, or a William playing, someone who has consistently let this side down, exactly, then he's signing his own death warrant. And the reality is that we talk about culture change at Arsenal and we throw all these big keywords around. But the truth is that if anybody else in the Premier League's top 8 teams were to finish 10th, this is Arsenal Football Club, finish 10th, it doesn't matter how you feel about a person in terms of Mikel Arteta, whether you like him, whether you think he's good, or whether you think this is a process. This is a results business, and at the end of the day, where we are is not acceptable for the level of investment that has been made into the squad. So for me, I would say I'm along the same lines as you, probably much more harshly. You said that you were reconsidering your view, and I have reconsidered my view. And for me, if we go out on Thursday night, I would be opting to move him on.
Interesting seeing in the chat box kind of the names that are coming forwards. I get really frustrated when I see the name Graham Potter, so I'm not going to entertain that at all. But in regards to kind of Rangnick is an interesting one out there, because the issue with Rangnick is, like, you see what happened at RB Leipzig and getting that side where they were. Arsenal's just a different kettle of fish to the Red Bull franchises. It's just such a difficult situation. You go into Red Bull and you've got all of these promising youngsters that have got these amazing potentials and great great ceilings, and that are in a situation where they could be grown in the Bundesliga at a point in time where the competition was not as fierce as it is now, ironically, because of the addition of RB Leipzig to the level that they are. They're now able to make big money for the players they sell, and then they're able to replace them with some really good players at the same time and compete. You look at kind of other managers. Rafa Benitez I have an issue with because of how kind of out of the game he's been recently. The jobs that he did at Real Madrid and Inter Milan worry me as well. And he's not got an unblemishable record. He did a really good job at Newcastle. But again, maybe that was situational. Whoever you pick, it's going to be a risk at the end of the day. It's really hard to not find someone that's it's going to be an easy one and to fit the situation. I mean, I feel like you want to.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and it's more surrounding the fact that we as fans, and I'm as guilty of it as anybody, is turning our noses up at people. And I remember prior to the Mikel Arteta appointment, Brendan Rodgers was someone that was tipped for it. So for me, Brendan Rodgers was absolutely fantastic at Liverpool. It just came a little too quick for him. And I think now you're starting to see...
Swansea.
Yeah, and Swansea as well, and Celtic too. That, you know, anybody that can get playing, Scott Brown playing like an actual decent footballer deserves United. So I think with someone like a Brendan Rodgers, and I know people might say, why would he leave Leicester to come to Arsenal? But the pedigree of the football club still matters. And don't forget as well, he left somewhere where he was pulling in titles every single season. He was going for the treble, and he left. So, you know, the money is something he is obviously willing to chase, and I don't think it's unrealistic to prize someone like him away from Leicester. And for me as well, we need somebody who knows the league. We have no time now for experimentation. If Mikel Arteta is to leave, I think we need it. And look, nothing can be a sure thing, but we need someone that's almost as good as a sure thing.
I will entertain kind of because people are asking about the whole Graham Potter thing. The reason why I'm so against Graham Potter is 2 reasons. Okay, 1 win at home in 2020, which ironically was against us. The other reason is because I think he's actually got a better squad than he is getting out of that squad. I look at the players that are in that team: your Trossards, your Proppers, your Neil Mopes, and all these guys. And I look at that and I go, I think he could be getting more out of that team. Your Ben Whites, he's got a good defence. He's got some good players in that squad, and I think they should be higher up the table than they are. And if he's not getting the best out of a Brighton squad, I don't think you can get the best out of a really poor Arsenal squad. I get what you're saying, Owen, in regards to turning our noses up at managers, and I don't want it to come across hypocritical that I'm doing the same thing with Potter. I don't think I am. I think it's justified in the reasons as to why that I don't want him there. I look at other coaches in the Premier League and you go, is say a Ralph Hasenhüttl the type of guy that Arsenal wanted? Back in December, it was looking like quite a nice option, but you then look at what's happened to the second half of the season to Southampton, and it's massively gone down. I think the whole point of this is to go that you need to look at things across a long period of time and take all things into account, and then make that decision. And you need to look at, say, where are the successes? Where have they done well at? And then you look at the failures. Why did the failures happen? Have they got the most out of the squad available to them? What's the situation? What's the style of play? Is it going to translate into Arsenal? You can't just pick up a manager from one club, drop them into Arsenal, and it's going to work out exactly the same. It just doesn't. I mean, you saw it with Emery. It didn't work. Like, people assumed that we get a little bit more maybe defensively astute under Emery because he was able to make a Sevilla side really industrious. But that didn't happen at Arsenal because he didn't have the personnel available to him. It's about finding someone that's going to get the best from the squad and is tailor-made to fit what we've got ultimately already. That's why there's maybe kind of the Ranić side of things in regards to the style of play could work. But the actual kind of situation of that club was so different to Arsenal. Finally, Mike, before we go on to the questions from the listeners, where are you at in regards to like the cutoff point for you? What is where you're pulling the cords? What has to happen for you to say, no, I'm done. This guy needs to go?
Man, you guys already went through some brilliant points. That this is where I'm at, and consistency in my viewpoints. I try to stay consistent, and I totally understand where you're coming from, Tom, where, you know, due to evidence, due to how the season plays out, you could change your mind. But I've said this for a really long time, and I know it's becoming very fastly unpopular with people, but sometime early to mid next season is when I'll truly start to judge him a little bit harder, because I do believe that keeping him around for the summer transfer window is vital, and in the sense that I'm of the thought process of, you get rid of a manager, you start from square one again. So you have to start all over. And I've often had this conversation with people online where, when I say we're in the middle of a rebuild, I often get a rebuttal. We've been rebuilding for 6 years. I don't see it this way. I see it as Wenger did his things at the last couple years. Unai Emery came in with a different structure, different board, different people backing him, ultimately pushed his word aside. We all know the story that Unai wanted Saha instead of Pepe. And so it was a different structure at the club. He came in. Ultimately, he came in with the, hey, let's work hard and run attitude. And unfortunately, our players thought they were above it. And ultimately, he ended up paying for that, right? So now we find ourselves in a structure where Raul left, Gazidis left. We got Edu in place. We got Arteta in place. We have Richard Garlick that's going to come in to help with the contract situations. We got Dick Law overseeing certain things. And the way I look at this is, since we have a new board, so to say, a new structure, this is for me, when they change the structure of how a club operates, that's a new breaking off point. So my breaking off point is Edu and Arteta as a duo. And if I'm looking at their one transfer window where they truly got to work together, I can't look at that transfer window and say they are not identifying players that the club needs and they are not doing something to move us forward. Because look, I know Willian has become a very popular player to bash Arteta with, right? I'm more along the line, and I say this, Tom, I could only listen and read things and pick and choose who I believe, essentially, when it comes to how transfers play out. Now, Tom, you've said on this podcast multiple times that Willian was essentially the one and only option that was given to Arteta.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, well, Arteta played a part and he signed him. We're like, well, it was the only option, so he went along with it. Shortly after that, Martinez was sold. Partey came in. Gabriel came in. Tierney, I'm struggling to remember what was Tierney this season or last season, this summer.
Tierney was 2019
when David Luiz
we were in 2020 for what seems at 5 years. So it's
I mean, this whole world's been crazy.
So all this, I will say, you know, like, I appreciate where you guys are standing with Arteta. The one thing I don't understand is some fans are like, if we get knocked out in the quarterfinals, that is it. Or the last 16, next round. If we get knocked out in the quarterfinals, that is it. Semifinal, if we get knocked out in the semifinal, that is it. Make up your mind, dude, because he's already surpassed the 16, the quarters. Go ahead.
No, it's just to counter your point, because like I've heard this argument from loads of people about backing Arteta and stuff like that. But if the sole basis on him keeping his job, or the fact that he's going in the right direction, is done through a couple of transfers, then take him on as a recruiter if he's that good at getting deals done. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what is done in terms of recruitment. It's what he's doing on the pitch and the lack of progression on the pitch. And whilst a lack of recruitment might come into play with that, the fact is the resources he has at his disposal are much, much better than the results that he's providing. So for me, that's a little bit of a shaky argument to put across in favour of Arteta, because to me, like, for example, a lot of people who back Arteta as well say that, oh, great from Arteta to get Gabriel and Partey, but Edu's an idiot for signing Willian. You know, it's...
Yeah. What I would say is that I've used that as an argument to say that, look, that's one of the reasons I want to stick with Arteta, is because I've seen the recruitment, I've seen what's gone well, I've seen him identify players. But you're right in pointing at Edu, because if Arteta goes, Edu is still here, and he was definitely involved in the identification of and bringing in of Partey and bringing in of Gabriel and Erdogan and all of these guys. So that is still going to be here. You've just got to hope that it's, for us, it's starting from square one if we sack Arteta, for me. Whereas someone brought up the example of when Leicester sacked Claude Puel and brought in Rodgers. Was that starting from square one? I don't think it was, because Leicester have recruited exceptionally well over a long period of time, and they had a good base already for Brendan Rodgers to come in and take on that squad and then add to it with the players that were there. So we're not starting from the same situation as, say, Brendan Rodgers was at Leicester, and I don't think Brendan Rodgers would have necessarily got us to as high as where Leicester have got already. I think he would have got us higher, definitely, than what we've seen. But I would think it would take a little bit more time because of the amount of recruitment that is going to be needed to really overhaul this squad. It's going to be really tough. Go on, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah. So in regards to, like, I know that if you look at our squad on paper, you say this team should be above, 10th, above 9th, wherever we're at right now. I can't escape the thoughts, guys, and I really and I know that for some fans it may seem like just an excuse to just bail out Arteta because I like the guy. And by the way, my theory essentially is I like the manager and support the manager until I feel the players turn on him. And so that's the feeling I got with Wenger towards the last couple of years. So I'm like, he has to go. Unai lost the PR battle with Ozil in his camp. I'm sorry, it's not going to work out. Arteta, I don't get that feeling. I get the feeling that the players are still with him. So the way I see it is I fully understand what you're saying, Owen, about the recruitment and everything, but I just feel like our squad, kind of piggybacking to what Tom just said, is our squad is severely unbalanced and out of depth in a lot of positions. And I just don't think it's comparing apples and apples, so to say. So when we do not have both Partey and Xhaka in the midfield, our midfield options are 14th place in the league, maybe. And there's an argument to be made that we're lower than that. When we don't have Tierney, that's a massive, massive downgrade left back, so on and so on. So we look at the squad and we say, on paper, I see some people, cheeky monkeys, as Danny would call them, try to squeeze into, like, how can this team finish 10th and they'll, like, include Odegaard, right? And they'll include Rowe, include Martinelli. Well, Rowe, Martinelli, Odegaard weren't available for the first part of the season. They were injured. And then Partey injured for a massive part of the season. I just don't feel that I could look at this team and say, it's okay to have Rowe, Smith Rowe, one of our best performers, Partey, undoubtedly our best midfielder and transformative midfielder, Tierney, a top quality left back, with the lack of depth that we have, and say to me, I don't feel comfortable saying that's just an excuse. Those injuries are nothing. When we're looking at Liverpool potentially not making Champions League, and if you ask most fans, well, what do you expect? They don't have Van Dijk. So I can't justify one team collapsing or having a bad season by their standards through the injuries, and then turn around and say, Arteta, I'm sorry, dude. The fact that you have to play a right back at left back, you have to play Ceballos or Aneni instead of Xhaka, instead of Partey, and say you've been dealt the cards to win in this circumstance. I feel like he has came into a very horrible situation with the team between COVID, clicks, wages, et cetera, injuries, VAR, and dude, he has to. And I hate to sum it up to this. He has to have one of the crappiest lucks of a first-year manager ever, and because there's so many things that just completely fell against him this season, to the point where I like I said, we literally had to pay a bad bunch of anti-professionals to leave Arsenal Football Club. You know how bad you got to be as a professional for somebody to have to pay you to leave? I don't, and it's like night and day, right? All of a sudden, Gerbil is no longer reporting on the leaks from the dressing room when that click leaves, and so on and so on. So this is what I'm holding on to with my dear life for to put myself in a Arteta in camp, because I really don't like the label. Is that when we've had a healthy squad, the majority of players healthy, it came right around that December mark. And that's when we had the uptick. And then gradually we started getting injuries again, and we started going to hell. So the way I look at it is as simple as we lack depth tremendously. Midfield is our options in midfield are horrible when one of Partey or Xhaka are out of them. Just completely drops. Pepe was in bad form, but luckily he's back on camp. And then the last but not least in defense, this is going to drive some people absolutely crazy. But guys, David Luiz, he's probably our best center back at this point. And I know that is not something that anybody wants to hear. But other than Gabriel, maybe he's a very important fixture in our defense, if not just for his his sporting ability, but for the communication line that he has with Gabriel. It's very obvious that when he plays with Gabriel is just a different type of player, in my opinion. So for all of that nonsense, I'm going to say until this upcoming summer, after he gets to do what's going to oversee a crazy amount of outs and a crazy amount of ins, I'm going to start to judge him with hopefully a healthy squad. And the very last point, Tom, I want to point out that just, Pablo, nothing against you, but it's a small pet peeve of mine. Guys, give the club credit for developing these young players. Because I just feel like when people are like, well, he's getting saved by teenagers. The club bought these players and developed them since they were like 7, 8, 9. And they're different. They're just a different brand. And I just feel like if you're good enough to play, you play. Like I'm going to make this comparison, and I'm not saying that I got to sneak this joke in here, Tom. I'm not saying that Saka is at Messi's level, because Messi started playing. Because here comes the joke, because he's clearly above that. But Messi started off from an early age. Nobody looked at Barcelona and said they're getting saved by a teenager. They looked at him like, wow, they brought this kid from Argentina when he was like 8, stuck with him, developed him. He's a beast. That's kind of how I look at Smith Rowe. I look at Saka. Hopefully Martinelli is going to be in that camp. And I'm really hopeful for, Aziz is being touted a lot. Cottrell is being touted a lot. And Sherjan. So I don't know. I don't look at that necessarily as, hey, the club got lucky. You kind of get it both ways. If we bash them for the players that don't make it and ultimately leave, we got to praise them for the ones that do make them.
I thought you were going to bash Pablo for not liking the Super League.
We're gonna go back now. I've done enough defending or providing my opinion of the Super League to get me shadow banned by all FT. So I'm gonna keep my opinions to that. I'm gonna lay those down and give them a rest.
Okay, right. We've got just over 15 minutes left, and we've got quite a lot of questions, guys. So I want to have some quick, snappy answers to as many of these as feasibly possible. So let's go through as many as we can. Pablo, starting with you. Daniel Roberts says, who is better and who would start for you on Thursday? Bernd Leno or Matty Ryan?
Right. First question is who's better? I would say Leno. Who should start on Thursday should be Ryan, purely because of confidence at the moment. I can see that Ryan has brought a bit of stability to the back. Bernd Leno at the moment, although he played really well on Thursday, against Villarreal and pulled off that amazing save that sort of kept us in the tie. I just think at the moment there's a lot of heat on Leno. He's been going for a bit of a bad patch, and as us Arsenal fans are used to doing, we've all jumped on his back, which probably hasn't helped him. It's a good job. It's a good job there's no fans at the Emirates as well, because that probably would have made it even worse. So to me, just for this game, I'd say go with Ryan.
Divian says, Owen, is our squad worse or better than Villarreal's?
It's better. It's better, 100%. If you look at the pedigree of all the players involved, and up till this season, the form of all the players involved, Willian included, it's a much better. Put it like this here: Francis Coughlin is still running about in midfield for them. You know what I mean? We've progressed a lot further than that. So for me, definitely 100%.
One of the issues
Arsenal.
with Arteta, though, is what I'd say is that, and we criticise decision making, he actually put a worse Arsenal 11 out last Thursday than Villarreal's 11. You're correct in saying that our squad is better, but he actually messed it up by putting out their team on Thursday was better than us. You go from that man for man, they were better than us, and they are. That 11 is better than ours. The strike is better. The midfield is better.
Actually made the comment that who says Coquelin over Partey is Amir. No, I actually made the comment that game was so terrible that it could only be managed by 2 Arsenal managers. That's how bad it was. Like, it was horrible.
That's perfectly summed up. Oh, dearie me. Zamir says, Mike, do we have that big of a drop in quality, or is it a combination of quality and Arteta doesn't have a plan B to steady the ship with backup players?
I think the plan B is a massive thing. I think that goes into these games with his game plan, and he thinks, guys, you're killing me. I'm going to call Mikel from now on. He goes in with a plan A, and he's very set in his ways in the sense that he's like, I'm going to tackle this game in this specific way, and this is what I think is going to happen. And like he spoke about it after the Villarreal game, where he said, yeah, we had a game plan, but my game plan fell apart after they scored early on. Like, guy, you should be able to kind of react to that, right? So, so I think he goes in pretty headstrong with the way he wants to set up the team. And as far as the quality goes, that's a weird one, because I kind of look at it in 2 ways. When it comes to forward options, we always have like Martinelli, Pepe on the field, or on the bench ready to come in, or sometimes it's Laka or Aubameyang. So when it comes to our forward line and pressing, when we need to press, we got options to come off the bench. But when it comes to our midfield options, the 2 that start, those are the 2 you're going to have to deal with throughout. So if one of them gets sent off, or is one of them having a bad game, I think the sub that he was going to make, which we all agree that he should have done earlier, speaks volumes to where he was going on that game, because when he said he was going to sub out Ceballos for Martinelli, I don't even know, 3-4-3, maybe he was going to do that. I was a little confused when he said that, because it wasn't like for like. So a little bit of both, Zamir, is what I'll say. But yeah, we lack a lot of quality in midfield, but we got seems to be enough options in the front 4 to annoy fans every time somebody's not on playing. So it's a good headache to have in the front 4.
Ed Welch says, Pablo, if Arteta wins the Europa League, is all forgiven, or do you want to see more long-term progress in signs?
If he wins it, then we need to get a statue outside the Emirates. Yeah, to be fair, he'll buy them a bit more time, and obviously with other fans to sort of say, look, okay, he's won the FA Cup first of all, then he's won the European Cup the following season. You've got to give the guy a chance then, because he's obviously proven his worth. The things with me is I'm not sort of judging him on actually winning the European Cup, because I believe United are the better team left, out of all the teams that are left. If we lose to United in the finals, even if we lose to Villarreal, but we've tried and put out a good team, then I can accept that. But when we're making silly errors and silly choices in the starting 11s and the substitutions late and stuff, that is what's griping me. So it's not even really about winning the cup itself. It's just about sorting out these issues that he keeps repeating over and over again. But yeah, the answer to that question, statue, get it. Done.
I did say the other day, I think if we were to win the Europa League, it would be Arsenal's biggest achievement since Wenger keeping us in the top 4 with like no money. It's to win this competition with this team in this situation after this season, it would be fluky as shit. Basically. But yeah, that's pretty much how I feel. Apologies for using my French, but that's just the way it is with that. It'd be ridiculous. Owen Cayman Gouda says, hearing that Leno wants to leave the club, this is a huge slap in the face. And what I want to also add on to that is that would you take Wojciech Szczesny back as well? Because that's also a growing rumour at the same time.
Man, he is one of those that got away, and Szczesny.
I would take him back.
Yeah, I would take him back 100%. But look, do you want to know what as well? Is I'd be completely open to Leno leaving. So what I have said, and maybe you can back me up on this, Tom, since the beginning, really, when even people were starting to go overboard and call him world class and one of the best keepers in the world, and it's just there's something about him that doesn't instill a pile of confidence with me. It's distribution. I tell you, I was talking to my brother the other day, and I said that Leno at this moment reminds me of David De Gea in his early United days. Very good shot stopper, but completely incompetent in terms of physically. Very unconfident in terms of his composure in high pressure situations. And for me, I just don't know. I know that Emi Martinez did something similar, but I never like when a player turns around and says, look, I need certainties that I'm going to be playing or else I'm off. You know, to me, that shows a part of their character, that they aren't up for the challenge of competing against somebody else. And for me, somebody like Matt Ryan does, and I actually think that he is a much more complete goalkeeper than Bernd Leno as well. So, yeah, look, I wouldn't have a huge problem. It's a bit of a slap to the face when the club have committed to him. And to be honest with you, I think part of the reason he's sort of fallen in terms of levels of performance is because he doesn't have that immediate competition and he has too many reassurances on the security of his position.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that Szczesny, obviously, people talked about saying he's too old. He's 31, goalkeeper. That's not old for a goalkeeper at all. I think that he would be an absolutely fine replacement for Leno, 100%. And I am planning on doing a tactical breakdown on Wojciech Szczesny, which is something I never thought I was going to do, but it's going to be happening. Pablo, sorry, not Pablo. We're going to go to Mike first, then Pablo. Let me just find the next question as it rolls down. Here we go. Classy Football is our brand new upgraded member. It says, in terms of the transfer window, what do you think the transfers would look like without European football?
I think we would keep a few more players than we're planning on selling. Potentially, like Joe Willock might be a player that we keep. Mainsley, potentially, that might be a key to save his Arsenal career. But that's my biggest bet. That and then potential loan market. I mean, Odegaard, it's, as I like to say, a snowball chance in hell of us signing him without Champions League Champions League money. Sorry. So if we could extend his loan, that would be absolutely brilliant. But I think that's what's going to be there. I think the difference between Champions League football or European football and no football will be loan and contract extensions. I could totally see the club extending David Luiz, Lacazette, potentially keeping Willock, Mainsley, if we don't make it, just on a cost-effective purchase. And then if we do make it, we might be a little bit more aggressive and go get that nice, shiny Bazuma that we all want in the midfield options, and potentially even selling one or two of our strikers and purchasing a new one. But if without European football, I could totally see them just saying, hey, we might have to be a little bit more reserved. Hey, Lacazette, can we convince you to sign a 1-year extension? David Luiz, a 1-year extension, and we'll go from there. I still think there's going to be a few players that are going to leave just because we're a little bit overstaffed in certain positions, like center back, for example. But I just think the reaction between extending and deciding to sell will be crucial whether we make it to the Europa League football next season.
Yo-Yo asks, Pablo, having sold Emi, signed Runnison and Ryan, would Leno leaving this summer not suggest Ed and Arteta are inadequate for our signings of a goalkeeper?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, there's Leno leaves. I wouldn't lose no sleep over it. Literally wouldn't lose no sleep over it. It's kind of frustrating the fact that we lost Emmy because of the whole thing that you couldn't have both of them in the same team, and in the following season he just decides to just go. As mentioned before, that's a right slap in the face. And if that is his attitude, then by all means go. You're not actually that good for us to be sort of worried about you going. There's plenty of options out there. Szczesny, for me, this is more of a personal thing. Just love the guy to bits. I literally do. I was following him right back when he went to sort of on loan to Brentford. I remember that, and he was like the player of the season near enough for the championship. So yeah, it's unfortunately didn't quite work out for him, but he's an Arsenal guy through and through. He's still a quality goalkeeper. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, Leno wants to leave, go. But it's just a shame that we lost Emmy in the process of him going.
Yeah, I think people discredit sometimes how important it is to have players who are fans of the club within it and have that connection as well. And Szczesny does bring that. He's also absolutely massive. So we'd have no problems with claiming corners or anything like that. So, and I just want to see that penalty taking, like a thing where he like shifts from side to side before he saves a penalty. I mean, I'd love to see that back. I mean, he didn't save many, but I mean, neither did Petr Cech. Here we go with the next couple of questions then. I saw a good one. Here we go. Slavomir says, Owen, what are the three main positions we need to strengthen this summer? For me, two of those are centre midfielders.
Definitely one of them. I suppose that depends. Let's operate in the premise that I think the likelihood is that we will extend Martin Odegaard's loan for another season.
Oh, really?
I do. I think that we'll not get him on a permanent, but they probably will loan him back, probably for a hefty loan fee. So let's operate in the premise that that's true. I think that right back is absolutely massive. Right-sided centre back, it depends, because for me, under Mikel Arteta, William Saliba probably won't get a chance in this side, I don't think. I think there's bridges but burned. So if Arteta's gone, I think that covers that position. He's doing quite well. Central midfield, I think we're starting to need to evaluate our striking option as well. With Alexander Lacazette having 1 year left in his deal, Aubameyang's form going downhill, and the age he's starting to get to as well. Striker. So yeah, for me, look, I think something that we've missed at Arsenal is a real top level centre half. And whilst Gabriel is very, very good, I'm not sure whether he's fully mature enough to carry our back line. So for me, it's a big centre back, a centre midfield, someone in the mould of Basuma, and then a striker.
Interesting choices. No backup left back for Owen there. No backup goalkeeper for Owen. Basically, we're going to be toothless. I mean, it just goes to show, obviously, how difficult it is going to be to prioritise positions, how much needs to be done this summer. I mean, you look at backup left back, backup goalkeeper, centre back is for me, it's possibly up there. You've got Saliba and Mavropanos coming back. You've got to decide what you're going to do with them. Saliba has shown really good leadership skills at Nice this season, but he's still a kid. Centre midfield needs addressing because we're losing Ceballos. I mean, we're losing other players as well. It's so difficult to really kind of quantify the area. Striker, we don't know what's going on with Nketiah, with Lacazette. What's going to go on with them? Do we need to sign someone there? Arguably a wide player, if we can actually manage to move on Willian. What are we going to do with all these positions? We need to work it out. Right back could need addressing if Bellerin is sold too. There's so much this summer. I mean, as we always say every summer, this is the most important summer of our lives. And it does stand true for that once again. Alex McCarthy, who rejoined as a member again today. Appreciate having you back, Alex, says, why doesn't Mikel have a settled 11 yet after 18 months? I understand the squad is inadequate for his style, but rotating consistently provides no consistency. What do you think about that, Mike?
I don't necessarily think that it's I don't think it's the lack of quality and he's rotating specifically by choice as much as his hand is being forced. When you get something going on and, Martinelli plays good, the very next game he's going to start, he sprains his ankle when he's training. So he's out for a while again. Lacazette, Aubameyang been in and out. Luis and Gabriel seem to be the partnership, and then Luis, breathed on that Wolves player. We lost Luis for like three games. Partey obviously been injured. Tierney's been in and out. I think it's been a little bit more forced than we would like to admit it. But I honestly think that there's a starting 11 out there where think about 9 players would start without any problem. I mean, I know we could just top of my head, Odegaard, Rowe, Saka, and you could debate Aubameyang and Laka if you want. Xhaka and Partey in the midfield, Gabriel Luis in the back, Tierney as left. These players, I don't think they'd be rotating in and out if A, the calendar were so congested, and B, if we didn't have this crazy amount of injuries. So I think it's a little bit of, bad luck with injuries. I don't think it's necessarily that he likes to rotate just for fun, but I think the congestion, this has been a very weird season in the sense that I don't think any pro athlete in football has had to play this crazy amount of games in the short amount of time, being that the season was short, about a month or so. So it's been kind of an odd and learning experience for everybody. So I'm going to go with that personally. I just think that injuries played a massive part. And if he had the complete squad healthy, I think there's about 8 or 9 players that gone on that team sheet without a doubt, and he wouldn't be swapping them in or out.
Fair enough. I think that we've comprehensively covered plenty of topics today, and we finish off the show with a brand new member as well. Jashar, thank you ever so much, mate, for joining up too. Really appreciate you upgrading your membership there, fella. As always, enjoy your exclusive content. If you have now managed to join our Discord server, enjoy your time in there as well. There'll be a new link in the community tab straight after the show finishes up, which is very, very shortly. I'd like to take a massive moment to thank my amazing guests this evening. It's been a really enjoyable hour and a half chatting to them. I mean, Owen, you survived it involved more than 4 people. There's actually like a chat box. There's a social aspect to this that's gone on, and you've made it through. So congratulations. But most of all, thank you for your time, mate. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, cheers, buddy. Absolutely brilliant to be back on. As I said in a message, it's probably too long. But if you want to find me, I know I don't have social media, but contact Mike Hertz at the official Cronky Supporter League Xhaka Supporters Club. You can find him on Twitter. Yes. He'll pass on any messages. But no, thanks for having me on again, and cheers, lads, for the great company. And Chatbox was lighting it up tonight as well. So
yes, it was. Yes,
I'm going to filter the messages like, hey, let Owen know that we miss you. Owen, hey, they don't miss you, mate. Just stay away. I'm just going to filter it like that, the way we're going right now.
Only sending the bad ones. That's all we want to see. Just going through all that self-esteem that's going to be growing within him 100%. Mike, thank you so much for coming on once again. It's been a while as it has been for Owen, but it's a massive pleasure having you on as always, fella.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Anytime you have an opportunity, I'm more than welcome. I absolutely love chatting with you guys. So thank you so much for having me on, Tom.
No problem at all. And finally, our resident Sky Sports correspondent on the ground at the Emirates every single week. It's Pablo. Thank you so much, Pablo. I really appreciate your time, fella.
Thanks for having us, Tom. Really enjoyed myself. It was lovely talking to the guys and everything. Just, really, really enjoyed it. Really good fun.
Good stuff. You can obviously find Pablo on Twitter at PabloMira11. You can find Mike at Mike Hertz FC, and you can find Owen in a bush somewhere in the Irish countryside. So we will see you again very, very soon. I'll be back tomorrow for Let's Talk Arsenal 5 p.m. And of course, the preview show with some more expert members will be on Wednesday, likely 3 p.m. UK time. I'm also planning on doing quite a lot more content daily as we come to the end of the season. Basically, as soon as the season is done, daily transfer shows at 8 a.m. I'm going to try and commit to this. I really, really am. It's going to get me into a routine. It's going to stop me wasting time playing Fallout before I start work. I'm just going to get on here and put out a transfer video pretty much every single morning. So that's going to be the routine, in addition to, of course, all the usual stuff. As I said, there's going to be a new link for our Discord server for the expert members and higher in the community tab as soon as this is finished. But if you've enjoyed the content, make sure you drop a like on the show. If you've got any things that you've really felt like you wanted to say based upon what the guys have said, and you know how to do it in a respectable way, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section as well. We will see you again tomorrow, 5 p.m. for Let's Talk Arsenal. It's been a pleasure to speak to you as always. And as always, up the Arsenal.